Hello, this is Michael Keeter with the Influential Dental Podcast brought to you by American Dental Institute. And I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Julieanne O'Connor. Good morning, Julieanne.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here with a couple of our favorite humans. Yeah, so we're joined today by Dr. Lincoln Harris and Kim Toovey of Ripe Global, who are a couple of our very good friends, and we're super excited to have a candid conversation with them today. So welcome, you two.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Good
having
morning.
us. And actually, it's the first time I've been introduced by my species.
Oh, well, there you have it. I don't know what that means, but you can get into it a little further if you want.
Well, I'm a human, so
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a human as well, so I'm glad we've established those ground rules, Dr. Lincoln. So,
Yeah,
I do want to reiterate what Julianne said. This is going to be a fun podcast because we also have Kim Toovey from Australia up at 2 a.m. So, Kim, I do appreciate you getting on the call this early in the morning for
So
you.
wait, what time is it there?
it's just turned over 1 a.m. now. Yeah, I appreciate that Mike was on his best behavior, trying to be like the good schoolboy when he's introducing us on the show as well. Like it's very unusual, but good job, Mike.
Yeah, well, as you guys are maybe aware, I don't know if you've ever watched our show, but it's this is the show that brings on the most influential people in the world. You guys can't see this if you're not watching the video, but I'm putting that in quotes. And so it is very exciting. Dr. Lincoln, you absolutely are, the epitome of that. You've become very influential. I'm kind of curious, actually, how'd you do that?
how did I become influential? Obviously, I've used social media initially. I started on Dental Town before Facebook, and then I moved to Facebook and now to Instagram, and now Instagram and LinkedIn. So a lot of the influence has been driven by social media, which then draw people on social media to then ask you for things. And so to some extent, a lot of the products and things that I've built has just been people on social media asking me for things. And then I think you also need a certain level of either confidence or arrogance, whichever word you prefer, where you believe that you have an idea that's worthwhile, even if other people don't agree. So, and that's a dangerous thing because when you think you have an idea that is useful and that it should be spread, and even if you get resistance, there's a fine line between being clever and being like insane. And so when you're pushing against resistance, sometimes people are resisting your idea because it's stupid. So that's always the balance, is trying to drive forward with your own personal ideas, your own authenticity against resistance.
You've gotten hate as well on social, like, because I know you hit a certain status, like, I'm not cool enough to get hate yet. Everybody's still really nice to me, but I'm guessing that once you get that, you've arrived. Just curious. You have anybody give you a hard time on social?
I think that there's not so much now, but there's like a kind of graph you could almost draw on the hate. So when you first go onto social media and you start making a name for yourself, everyone is supportive because you don't threaten anyone, particularly people who are more experienced or older than yourself. And then as you grow in influence and notoriety, or just people knowing you, particularly if you're super ambitious and you're driving hard, then at some point, all the people who supported you initially, a lot of them start to hate on you because either your trajectory is going up faster than theirs, even though they're older and more experienced, or just because, it's like the young Turk syndrome. These young Turks, they need to walk before they can run. And back in our day, we had to go through an initiation process. And so you see that. That sort of generally comes in about 6 to 12 months after someone's really pushes hard on social media. You might not get that as much, Julianne, because maybe you're just nicer.
I'm not as cool.
She's not
I don't
nicer,
think
by the
I'm
way.
as big, influential. So Kim and Dr. Lincoln, I'd love to kind of, because we haven't really given a formal introduction. So are you guys willing to share a little bit about who you are, how you came to be so influential from the standpoint of what it is that you're doing? So on the standpoint of, or from the standpoint of your company, Ripe Global, which has grown very, very quickly, has some very innovative things that you brought to market, which we're really excited about for you. And now you're in the US too. You moved from Australia to the US. You're also in some other countries too, right?
Kim Toovey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Julianne. I am the Global Chief Operating Officer for Ripe Global. So in our current format, we've been, I guess, servicing around 35 countries now for about the last 5 years, just over the last 5 years. We've got around 700 students in continuing fellowship programs and residencies at the moment. Yeah, I mean, it's this amazing concept of, we're essentially addressing the skills crisis that's taking place in dentistry. Is, I guess, kind of closing the gap of that hand skills when you come out of university and you've kind of learned the didactics. You've got your license to be safe and practice safe dentistry, and essentially you come out and have a fundamental gap in the ability to be able to perform the procedures that you have an expectation to do in your day to day. So Ripe Global is essentially there to close the gap on that in a safe and constructive manner, as well as having really supportive mentorship community that allows education to flourish.
Yeah, I have a question on that. So I have a friend who's, a new grad, and he's working with a DSO right now, and he's trying to, he's wanting to place implants. He's done tons of them already before he came to this DSO, and they're not supporting him. They're not actually providing, they won't even get him the kit to do, like he has to buy his own implant kit. And so, I mean, do you guys have a way around that when you get pushback from the corporate side, when somebody's really a go-getter, they want to grow fast, they want this stuff. Are they coming direct? Is the company supporting them? What's that look like?
I think that we get a very interesting insight into the workings of DSOs globally. We work with so many now, and often they're coming to us because they have problems. And the number one way that we see the EBITDA, so that, the only thing that the private equity firms and sometimes the C-suite talk about is EBITDA. And so what's interesting is that the companies that don't do well are the ones that don't focus on clinical dentistry. So when they're not clinically led, they're operationally led, they always perform poorly. And your case is a good example of where a DSO has a very motivated dentist who will produce very high levels of income and be probably in their top 10% of most profitable dentists. But because they are so used to, modestly performing dentists, when they get a high performer, they don't look after them. And so it's the typical example of any corporation or any business where if you don't give your high performers encouragement and weed out your low performers, over time, the high performers leave. We do see this quite commonly where, the focus goes so heavily onto cost cutting and treating dentists like a commodity that's easily replaceable and not supporting people to grow and to succeed and so on. And almost invariably, the companies that do this, their profitability drops. It doesn't go up. And so, yeah, quite sad.
Again, I mean, my background, with Noble Bach here, director of training education, and did a lot of live courses, local, regionally, nationally. Definitely what Ripe Global is doing here, Kim, is definitely not only bridging that gap, but turning that gap on its head, right? Providing, world-class education that's taken right to the doctors themselves in their practices, and got to, look into your company a little bit, and it truly is innovative, and I'm very happy for your success. And as Julieanne said, we met you first at Dicoma a couple years ago. You guys are great guys. We had a lot of fun. And I guess that's one thing, even though Dr. Lincoln Harris is being very stoic here and modest, he's a fun guy too, and an amazing dancer. So hopefully you can see that sometime out in your communities and at these meetings. But I do want to reiterate, though, that what you guys are doing with Ripe Global is truly innovative and bridging that gap to take those high performers and offering those DSOs a way to educate them at a very, not economical, but a very fair price, and to really put your money where your mouth is, because I've seen, the guarantees and things you guys provide. And, what Julieanne are doing on the mindset and leadership side as well is something that's duly needed as well. So, yeah, now I'm very excited for what you all are doing in dentistry and literally turning the education component on its head.
So, Kim, last time I saw you was where?
Yeah.
You brought up Mike, you brought up Dicoma, and it's funny because, I think we met you 2 years ago at Dicoma, and then saw you again last year. And it's like every time we all get together, it's like this incredible crew of people that come together. But you guys are always the most, this is not the right word, belligerent might be a word for it, but no, the most
Just call it Australian.
vivacious, you bring the light to the party. And although I have to provide counsel for you in America for things you say,
Australian charm, the Australian charm.
yeah, but Kim, where have you been? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm back in Australia. I'm currently playing the waiting game for my passport and visa to return from the US. Unfortunately, with the government lockdowns at the moment, that might take a little bit longer. But I'm very eager for my relocation to the US. Obviously, our expansion into the American market is going forth leaps and bounds, and it makes sense for us to start building a real operational presence in the US to service that. Yeah, so I'm very excited to be able to be a lot closer to my dear friends, and especially you guys. Like I said, whenever I am flying my way through an airport from one side of the country to the other, it generally results in a catch up with one of you guys.
So tell us a little bit about how you two came together. And I mean, you run this amazing operation. You have tons of people that you're responsible for, not only in your own business, but all the way out through to the DSOs where you guys are working with them. So what's a little secret to your leadership and how you guys came together?
Lincoln tells our love story.
I think a big part of it is our amazing interview process. Like we have this incredible process. We sort of looked at best practice from Amazon and Apple about how they run the interview processes. Yeah, so basically we met at the gym. So I went to the gym. It was basically CrossFit, and there was this like beast of a man. There was one, like I'm like the Charles Atlas advertisements, the 70-pound weakling, getting sand kicked to my face. And so I go to the gym, and there's this one beast who's doing squats, and he's like the one guy in the gym where the bar is bending because there's so much weight on it. And so I thought, this guy's probably just like a complete gym bro meathead. And so I didn't think too much of it, because that's what you think about people who can lift more weight than you. Like people who can lift more weight than you are obviously a bit thick, and people who lift less weights than you are lazy and ill-disciplined. And so anyway, we were in the process of just gymming out. And then at one point I said, so what do you do? And Kim at that time was sporting quite long hair, so he was looking a bit like a hippie. And he goes, yeah, I manage 1,200 audiologists in the largest audiology company in Australia. And this was in a small country town where I lived. And I went, holy cow, like what is the odds of meeting someone with that sort of operational experience in healthcare? In Bundaberg, where I live, it's a town of 50,000 people, which is mostly renowned for being full of rednecks and, social security sort of type people who, in Australia, we call it the dole, as in people who are on welfare, had the highest unemployment for something like 40 years. So it's not something where you normally go searching for executive talent. So that was the Amazon-like interview process.
This was meant to be. Kim,
what's your take on that? Did you know this was like his view that he was looking at you in the gym, or?
Felt it's weird. I felt this lurking presence most of the time, and being one of those gyms where there's lots of mirrors, you can kind of catch that awkward look, and I'm like, this is weird, and you keep moving away. But no, it was. I mean, it's interesting. Is we had first met, and I didn't think too much of it. I wasn't a local, born and bred in the town that we both lived in. So Lincoln in that town, as well as around, as a very successful boutique practice. It's a huge presence in and around that. I didn't know him from a bar, so the name didn't register. And then people started going, oh, that's Dr. Lincoln Harris. I'm like, awesome. Anyway, so we kind of connected, and I think we found common ground outside of any potential fame and opportunity that may be. Really connected on that personal level, and then kind of got to find out a little bit more about each other from a professional setting. And I think what really serves Lincoln and I really well is that we work some pretty long and extreme hours in the trenches together for long periods of time, from weeks to months. And I think the best part is that no matter what is going on at any particular time, we can kind of finish up a day and actually still want to hang out together. It's not a working relationship that stops as soon as the workload stops. We can kind of just hats off and go, all right, let's go to the gym, let's go for a hike, let's go grab a drink, whatever it may be. I think that serves us really well, and in turn serves the company community.
So Kim, on that note, I mean, you guys got to run into like having conflicts and stuff from time to time. And I know Lincoln has been like the psychologist that, comes from, another field as well. What's your psychology background? Seriously, Dr. Lincoln, you've got, I mean, obviously you and I have had some run-ins because we've had some intense conversations, but we're not the type of people to take offense, right? We all walk away and we're laughing at the end of it. But not everybody is that way. I have, a tendency to offend people myself. And so what's your background on psychology? Why do people come to you for counseling, coaching? What is that piece of you that maybe people who just see you as the CEO of Ripe Global don't know about you?
The psychological aspect is actually interesting. I think it started with having a large social media group. So I don't focus on it so much now, but for about 5 years, I was heavily focused on building a Facebook page, which I think has now got about 90,000 members. When you deal with large numbers of people who are unfiltered, which is how people tend to be, in person, there's a lot of social pressure for you to behave, like getting punched in the face. But when you're online, a lot of that social pressure is removed because you can't see the impact of your words, you can't see the body language, and your risk of getting punched in the face is quite low. So people become unfiltered. And so you can kind of take two approaches when you're dealing with people at large scale, which is people are just bad people, or thinking about what is the underlying reason that someone acts like this. So most of the time, the reason that someone acts in an unusual way is not the obvious surface reason. It's like the second or the deeper reasons. You might get someone who acts super aggressive online. And you go, okay, maybe they're just a bully, but the underlying problem is most likely like they're massively insecure and they have some sort of trauma in the background. So that was part of it. I think a second part of it is that my sister, who is an incredibly high performing woman, pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until she hit burnout and then had to take 18 months off and then spent like an enormous amount of time, with psychologists and various other counselors to get her life back on track. And so just being an accessory to that, you pick up a lot of psychology. And I've also been to a psychologist myself quite a number of times to deal with my own triggers. As a CEO, I can be pretty feisty, not because I'm a CEO, just my nature. I can be pretty feisty when pushed. And when you're a CEO, because of the authority difference between yourself and other people, if you get stippy with your staff, then it's not just like having an argument with a colleague who's on the same level. It's much more amplified by your authority. So that's the psychological aspect. And then the thing about working with Kim is that Kim and I have such different skill sets that essentially hardly overlap at all. And so we basically have almost no opportunity to tread on each other's toes. So like my operational ability at managing large numbers of people and keeping them with high morale and all pointed in the right direction and doing like daily check-ins with a whole bunch of people and dealing with all of their emotional baggage is like very low. And, whereas Kim's is very high. So like we're extremely complementary. Without someone with significant operational ability, I would be kind of helpless. And then I probably have some skill too, which I can't think of at the moment. Probably public speaking, getting people to buy into a vision, I'm probably fairly good at. And then just absolute grinding endurance is something that I have developed over a decade or so, which is, in this type of business, most of the difference between success and failure is your ability to never give up.
Yeah, we had Dr. Avi Patel on the show, and I think he said something to the effect, I'm sure he was quoting somebody about how you won't fail if you just keep going, right? That was like some simple, straightforward, like just keep going and eventually you'll get somewhere that is, the there that you expected or
Right. Everything's not
is,
linear, right? I mean, it's
yeah.
ups and downs, turns around. And like we said, Lincoln, regarding your complementary skill set and how you and Kim look at the world, I think Julieanne and I have a very similar relationship in our company as well. So I do think that's great to not only acknowledge that, but to embrace that. You need to have those complementary skills in that same direction. Kim, what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, running a multi international company and the growth rates like this. How do you see, your relationship with Lincoln and your skill set and your team in general?
Yeah, I think Link kind of nailed it. Actually, is we definitely don't tread on each other's toes, and but at the same time, I think we've both come from a place of understanding where we can sit there and still offer advice on situations, and it comes from a point of wanting to help, wanting to support, which is great to get, I guess, kind of fresh take, fresh approach. And then for me, it's about harnessing and providing a support team around Lincoln to be Lincoln. Lincoln is this incredible voice in the industry. He's this resilient force that kind of drives the business forward through situations that a lot of executives that don't have a high level of resilience won't make it through. So, it's for me, it's about building this team around Lincoln that allows, I guess, his vision for Ripe Global to come to fruition. And, it's actually really inspiring to bring the team along for that journey and involve them in what it is that we're trying to achieve as a company as a whole is for me super rewarding, especially when you start to see the penny drop with the team, when they start to see, oh wow, I've actually just contributed to that particular project coming to life, and that's the result it's had for our students, for our clients, even for just stuff that are taking place in the project. They've got that sense that they're part of something bigger and something more important. And we're definitely, I guess, kind of cutting the ice in the education world in the method of how we're approaching it, breaking away from that a traditional education model of brick and mortar and fly to an exotic hotel, and you're in a hotel lobby for the weekend, and practicing on typodonts and drilling in the back of people's heads and stuff like that you can't really replicate with much joy and excitement from a patient come Monday. So yeah, by being able to see that rapid uplift of our students that take place in our programs, yeah, I think holistically the whole thing comes together really, really well. And yeah, it's a good place to be right now.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I want to ask. So, it's interesting because I think we kind of share people's journeys here, right? And you guys have built this massively successful company. It has not been for the faint of heart. However, you guys have traveled so many places. I know Mike and I are traveling all over the map, but we are all over the globe but we're not going overseas every time, right? And you guys are. So you are sleep deprived a lot of the time and you are traveling all over the world. How do you guys kind of get through that, and how do you support each other? Because people do burn out, and we talked about it. I know you guys have both been pretty open with us about what that looks like. But you guys are supporting each other on some level. And what else? Like, what for people out there who are they're burning out and they're not doing half of what you're doing sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So there's got to be something you bring
So I
to the
think
table.
the secret is to be from Australia, because in Australia, if you head to, I'll tell you why. This is a serious answer. I flew to London for the first time I flew Denver to London. So obviously my home airport now is Denver International. And from Denver International, I can fly to 167 cities, 110 of which are within the United States. And there's like 70, I don't know. In my previous life, I could fly to one city. So Bundaberg to Brisbane was the only flight, and it ran 4 times a day. And then if I wanted to come to, say, an event in Orlando, which I go to pretty often now, I would fly Bundaberg, Brisbane, Los Angeles, Orlando, which is about 26 hours total travel time. And the level of exhaustion that you get from that type of travel it's just on a different level. And so once you've grown up, and when you're Australian, that's normal. You don't actually understand how far away Australia is until you move somewhere else. So like on all the maps, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean are the same size. And so in my mind, I would go to Europe Europe, and I'd see all these Americans and go, oh, wow, you've made a big trip to Europe just like me. And only later did I realize if you're in Boston, it's less time to get to London than it is to get to Los Angeles. And so being way up here on these high latitudes just means that travel everywhere is really easy. So for me, I basically commute to London and the EU once a month. But it's just you don't even hardly get out of Australia in the same time. Like if you go to Bali, which is in the direction of Europe, you fly across Australia for 7 hours. and then you fly across the ocean for like 45 minutes, and then you hit Bali. So it's the same time as going from here to London. So actually, the United States is such an incredible place to do business, partly just geographically. Like, it is an incredible time zone here in Denver. I can talk to people from Europe and the EU and UK from like as early as I get up, from 5 in the morning until about 1 in the afternoon. And then basically about when they all go to sleep, I can then talk to the Australians until whatever time I go to bed, or anywhere throughout Asia. But if you're in Australia, everyone in America is going to bed when you get up. And then there's a dead zone until about 4 in the afternoon when the Europeans start waking up. So the travel that you see us doing is just easy here.
I get it. Yeah, it's funny when you get faced with the hard stuff first, the rest becomes easier, right? And if it flips, then it's all over. Everything's like, grudging.
Or you could be Kim Toovey and just get up at 1 a.m. to do interviews.
Look, I think, Lincoln's nailed it. Like the travel is one thing, and I think it's funny. Incredible place to do business. I can't disagree with that in the US, and the the Colorado location itself lends itself to being that really friendly time zone for all. It's interesting to flip that, though, is when we get back, well, from an operational sense, when I get back to Australia, it actually straddles really, really well from an operational setting where we're actually producing work for clients. So having the engine of the company still based in Australia, I know we've got Quinton, our VP of business development for the US, always says he's kind of like got his a little Australian worker ferries that, he can finish the end of a day and brief the Australian team on development, design, any kind of business analytics that may need to be produced for a client. And it gets worked on during the day. And when he comes to work the next morning, it's ready for him and it's ready to go. And yeah, it's interesting on the flip side of that. And then operationally, being able to get the US in the morning for me, work with the Australian team all day, get things ready again for European zone and for the US at night. Yeah, it works. It works quite well on both ends of the side.
So there you have it. Ripe Global working 24/7 for your international global education needs, which is true. You guys are, and that helps. I'm going to change subjects a little bit because one, we got to learn more about how you have fun, why you have fun, and some of the fun things you do. Before I go there, obviously, our podcast is called Influential Dental, and we talk about your influence in the community. Who's been influential in, I guess, each of your lives, either as a young person or continues to be? Because again, that kind of makes who we are, especially from our young selves, our young Kim Toovey, our young Lincoln Harris. So if you could share a little bit about who's been influential in your lives in the past and currently, and then tell us some fun facts about what y'all do for fun.
I think the most influential person in my life is most influential person in two of my closest friends who lived up the road from me when I was at school. And one of them went on to create a bank. So, while I stayed in Bundaberg, he went to London, got an MBA, worked in banking, was commuting between London and New York, built his own bank, and has been incredibly supportive. And then his younger brother is also, it's the rare situation where I'm extremely close to both brothers. He's a farmer and also successful. His farm is about 10,000 acres of irrigated land that doesn't frost. So if you think like San Joaquin Valley style land, which is worth an incredible fortune. And so I've spent a lot of my years prior to Ripe Global sitting in a John Deere talking about business with a guy who had a huge stanky leg. I had a huge stake in a bank and was a farmer. And so we talk about business. So those two, without them, I wouldn't know what a capital raise is, because the venture capital scene in Bargara, Queensland is quite slim. And then for fun, this business is damn fun now, particularly now that we're getting results. Like one of the DSOs we're working with, we just published their results. It's like their dentists that we're working with are up 32% in the last 7 months, and the return on investment for the DSO in 7 months is sitting like 14.5 times what they've spent. So That's fun. And then I like to hike.
Yes. I see some of those photos up in the Rocky Mountains. It looks amazing. So someday I'd love to do some hiking with you up there, Lincoln.
For me, I've been asked this question a number of times, and my answer is always still the same. You guys have recently done a wonderful article on myself in your latest publication, which is amazing. Grab a copy, subscribe. Is that the plug? Look, I started my working career as a pimply faced 13-year-old at McDonald's, and worked up my way through different operational roles over the years before leaving to go and get in my own businesses. And I got to work for two amazingly experienced and wonderful franchise partners in the McDonald's world, both for different reasons. The first one I started with was massive around community and it wasn't just the golden arches for him. It's about what McDonald's stood for. And it's about, although I've got a furry friend joining us in the background, kind of what people essentially was his thing. So I learned the high care for people, the high care for community from him. And then I worked for it was Australia's longest serving rather, a franchise partner. He was the second one when McDonald's first opened in Australia 50 years ago. And I learnt the power of combining the people element with profit, and the two-way operational flex of the great people to get great profit. You've got to have great profit, and then you share that back with your people as well and reinvest back in. So those two franchise partners for me really set, I guess, my future. Yeah, and I guess I've kind of held those values to this day.
For anybody who doesn't know what he's talking about in terms of the publication, that's our magazine Influence for dental professionals. And people can get a copy of that at influentialdental.co. So if anybody wants to subscribe there, it'll automatically send you. There's no cost for the magazine. And there is a beautiful spread in there about Kim Toovey. And we'll probably, if we could talk Dr. Busy Lincoln into contributing an article at some point, we may ask him to also put something in there for maybe one of our upcoming issues, where I think a friend of yours is going to be on the cover of the winter issue, by the way, Dr. Lincoln. It's a
So
beautiful
that
cover.
may be a perfect time to do an article. And
And then I know you're going to chime in on fun.
Isn't Kim the centerfold? I think Kim's the centerfold. And isn't he like on your calendar?
He wouldn't
I'm pretty sure.
you may have to subscribe to see. So I would say subscribe to the magazine, and you'll see if Kim Toovey is the centerfold in our influence. So Kim, what do you do for fun?
What I do for fun, look for me, I mean, what we do is super fun. I mean, I get to work with people all over the world in the different time zones. So, for me, going to work is not, I don't see it as a chore. It's something that's, right now as we're growing and it's a rapid growth it's pretty consuming. However, I look at my power down time, and, I've got a huge love for animals. So spending time with my fur children whenever I'm at home is a big, important part for me. It's also probably the downside of being on the road as much, is that you don't get to see them as often. But then, I still like to stay physically active. So running for me is still a big part of my world. Yeah, that's kind of my downtime fun.
Amazing. So you guys, what's next in your growth trajectory? Do you guys have anything new coming, or is it just continuing to really hone in on what you guys are currently doing for people? I know you're making a huge impact in the industry. There's nobody like you guys out there in the industry. So people who don't know what they're doing or are not familiar, definitely check them out. Where can people actually find you? We might as well chime in on that in case anybody cuts out early.
ripeglobal.com is where you can connect with us, or on LinkedIn. Kim and I are both on LinkedIn, so you can send us a message there. But I think it's interesting, our businesses had, the background of our business was just, how do you solve the problem of travel? I had a business before this running continuing education hands-on, which was quite innovative in itself. And our first big innovation was, how do you get better results when you train people? Because you train people and they get really high levels of complications and low levels of implementation. And I was trained as a pilot before I became a dentist. And so at one point I thought, if we train pilots the way we train dentists, lots of lectures, one demonstration, and then you go and do it, they'd all be dead. And so then I thought, maybe we should train dentists the way we train pilots. Like, sure, they're not going to die, but nonetheless, it's a better method. And so we moved in about 2016, all of our didactics and theory online. So this is way like everyone else did this in COVID. We did this 4 years before COVID. And then when people came to a hands-on, all they did was hands-on repetitions, which typically means that you do like about 4 times as much repetitions as a standard. A standard hands-on course is mostly a lecture. So they say hands-on, but you turn up and you get a lecture for half the day, then they do a demonstration, and then you do one crown prep or one implant on a typodont or something that you can pick up with your hands and is really artificial. And so this is not an effective simulation of real work. So that was the background. And then as we built the technology that allows you to project hands-on training for procedures and surgical techniques globally, that was essentially we were doing R&D with our paying customers, because you can't build this stuff unless you're using it. And so you kind of have to sell someone the idea and then use this technique on them and then continue to refine and develop it. And then once we had that going, we said, okay, now we have this method that works really well, super effective, but we don't have enough demand. And the demand's going to be in the United States because nearly 40-something% of all money that's spent on training and education of dentists is spent in the United States. So it was quite a difficult process. So we got here and we really started into the DSO market. We focus on DSOs right now because we have such an enormous competitive advantage on both implementation rates and costs. Like we can scale to any level really quickly, and our costs are about 1/4 of traditional training. And so that combination of lower costs, higher implementation means the return on investment levels that people who work with us get are insane. That was step 2, was like focus on American DSOs. We went to DICOMA this year. We had 0 American DSOs. We've now signed 2. I think by the end of this week, we'll have signed 3. By the end of this year, we'll be at like 10 or 12. By the end of next year, we'll be working with 30 and probably 100 the year after. Like we will very quickly become the largest training partner. And we're not really an education company. Like we do education, but we're a performance company. We help people get performance out of their associates. And that's a much more difficult task than just training. Because when you do education, you educate someone, and then if they don't perform, you just blame them. But a performance company takes responsibility for actually getting an outcome. And so that's been our current step. And I guess the next step is we are about to crank up, like we have these huge data sets that no one else in the world has, like implementation rates, how dentists learn, how quickly they learn, what their hand efficiency metrics are like. And so as we build that data set and then compare it to the practice management software to get their procedure mix and their average billing hour, we get this predictive model of what is the best investment for each particular dentist to get the maximum return on investment with that dentist. So that's our next step, is building that data set. And we have saved all of our data for the last 5 years. So it's just sitting there ready to use. So now we're starting to crank up the data and machine learning part of the business to become that bespoke prescriber of individualized training programs at scale.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said regarding that. You're not just a training company. And what I'm hearing and what I'm always discussing and talking about is being a true strategic partner, right? You're strategic partners in each other's success and in their success, looking at it from a business perspective, looking at an efficiency perspective, training education, that's the doctor's perspective, right? And being, a dentist yourself, you know that, you know those trajectories. I like where you're bringing in together the training education with the strategic partner and business model to the table and really providing results. That's an amazing thing.
Yes. So a couple of questions, or one in particular is like, if a DSO is interested in doing business with you, what do they need to do, and what would prevent them from wanting to do this? Just a couple of questions on, like, if somebody from a DSO is listening to this podcast right now, how do they engage? Because very obviously, sometimes we have like the chief clinical officers of big DSOs, they want this. They're absolutely representing the doctors, but then it's got to get to the CEO of the company, which is more of a business mind. And I mean, obviously you've got the data, So do you guys see where there's anything that we can support you with in terms of, helping these guys to move forward with working with you, or how does somebody engage?
Sure. Yeah, look, I think there's a couple elements to it. Is I think it's this forward mindset that needs to be present in in the DSO around legitimately changing the course of the DSO's performance. So, all too often we've heard before is gone, oh, we've got a clinical director, we've got a great clinical team, we've got a great education department, but it's the ability to be able to implement and scale that, especially the DSOs are growing at an alarming rate, is the continual challenge of, all right, I've just opened 20 practices, and it's not just about throwing bodies at the problem. From an education point of view, is as Lincoln said, there's one thing to do the didactic, but then you actually need to be able to implement and drive that. Is we're in a unique position to be able to scale, monitor, provide the data feedback, as well as being able to, I guess, be a bolt-on part of that clinical team for that DSO to make sure that they're reaching their financial targets and whatever it may be from a performance outcome as well. And we've got that enough data there to be able to show where the doctors are at in their performance level, as well as going, all right, well, this doctor needs more growth and development in this particular section, or this doctor is, on a fast trajectory pathway to kind of needing to move into complex implantology or whatever it may be. We've got all of that data set there to be able to support and help. So what it looks like from a DSO point of view is that openness to be able to want to legitimately change what they're doing within their DSO, and not just say it. That's a big part of it. And then I think obviously we've again got that data in place to be able to go, hey, cool. From a C-suite point of view, is we can bring you along for the journey going, cool, if you implement X, we can monitor and support and grow your team to be able to achieve X. And yeah, kind of help you bake the bread with the right ingredients.
Yeah, I think key way that we interact is essentially diagnosis and treatment plan. We don't come in with a cookie cutter approach. We go, what are your pain points? What are your problems? What are the things that are difficult? Now, there are some that are very similar, but there are some that are different too. Like, we have a huge growth in UK and Europe just through word of mouth. Like, we're not actively focused on those markets, but we've picked up 1, 2, 3, I think 4 DSOs in the UK. We've also working out, and a couple in Europe, which adds the language barrier, which is tricky. And so there are some things that are the same, but then, obviously in the Netherlands, you're dealing with fixed prices. The government mandates the price of treatment, and you're not allowed to change above that. So this is a whole different problem. I mean, and then obviously everyone talks about the headline. Then you discover their dental assistants are allowed to do just about anything. So you can kind of balance, two things there. And then in the UK, you're not allowed to say that a private ceramic crown with a really good lab is better than the cheapest milled metal crown from a cheap lab under the NHS. So you're not allowed. So then you can find ways for the patient to understand that without saying it. So there's like little complexities that you have in America. There's certain insurance groups that certain DSOs have and so on. So the DSOs we can't help. You can't help them if the biggest hindrance is really if you have a chief clinical officer who has a little empire in the DSO and they don't want to improve that because it might challenge their little empire. So if you've built an empire within a DSO and you really don't want to change anything because your personal ambitions will be challenged, then we can't really help. But for anyone who wants to be more efficient, get better implementation rates, higher return on investment, more scalability, and they're open to it, we not only can provide the uplift of the associates, but we also have deep insights, probably deeper than almost anyone else, into DSOs across large geographical areas. And because we're not a consultant, we're not a lawyer, we're not doing mergers and acquisitions, no one holds back on telling us their secrets. So we don't share their secrets, but we do build a knowledge base of things that do work and things that don't, that are very consistent across countries, states, insurance systems and so on. So we're not really consultants, but we obviously help people on the side. Now, the way we deal with the C-suite is we talk clinical dentistry and excellence and patient care to the dentist, and we talk EBITDA to the C-suite. and only EBITDA and return on investment and EBITDA multiples and enterprise value. So we just talk the right language to the right people. At Bombshell, I'm going to have to jump. So I'm going to have to jump off because I got a bank appointment. So I'll have to leave. Kim, okay, see you, bye.
All right. Thank you so much. So really quickly, how long does it take to onboard a DSO? I'm just curious. Like, do you guys do it in phases, or you do test accounts, or what? I know that's a technical question, not usual to our show probably, but I'm just
No, I
curious.
love that. Yeah, I mean, look, our biggest part is going through that initial phase of understanding what exactly it is that we're trying to address within a DSO. We do have a wide variety of courses that we do have the ability to implement depending on what the DSO's need is. So we really flesh that out and make sure we're addressing, I guess, all of the key pain points that are being communicated for us. And then from the onboarding element of it, it's anywhere between a month to 2 months from kind of start to go, when we've actually got clinicians onboarded into our platform and doing their first virtual simulated hands-on days. It's actually, and then it's actually super cool to be able to sign a client, start having discussions with their clinical team, start interacting with their doctors. And then I joined a hands-on session, a virtual hands-on session 2 weekends ago, where I'd met some of the clinical team in Detroit when they had their in-person. And then all of a sudden, we're joining all of the 20 of their doctors on an online simulation clinic, and seeing them actually apply the hands-on skills of our course was super, super cool.
And so,
Nice.
really quickly, also for people who don't understand it, the thing that gave me a better understanding was when you guys described or shared that you actually send out a kit with a mannequin and everything, right? For these
Yeah.
simulations. So it's like, do they do this in their practice, or do they do it at home?
Yeah, I love that. So the fun part is you can actually do it in both. The more desired role is actually doing it in your clinic in the safety of your own chair. Lincoln spoke earlier about getting that high performance repetition type approach to dentistry, and that's no different. So by sending out this kit, you set it up in your dental chair, you're using your own tools, you're learning muscle memory in a position where you're going to be doing that same procedure day in, day out. You've got the ability to involve your DA if needs be, and if you've got the availability to do so in your training, which is another great addition as well. And then all too often, like traditionally, if you go away to a hands-on course, there's generally a sponsor or the educator's got a favorite product that they like to use. And it's a practice manager's worst nightmare when you come back and the dentist is like, I just want you to order all of these things. These are fantastic. I want all new resins, I want all new burrs and whatever it may be. And they're like, yeah, no, that's not happening. So you're learning to understand your tools and your equipment, and getting that high reputation in a safe surrounds. And then come Monday, you're swapping out that mannequin head for a human head, and you've got that muscle memory and understanding how your drill piece works, which is super important for getting that real efficiency in your procedures.
Well, I just want to say, as we're wrapping up, Kim, want to appreciate you and Dr. Lincoln Harris for being our podcast. And obviously, 2 years ago when we met, obviously friends first, and always that continues to be. However, obviously, we're on Red Global's platform as well, Influential Dental. Julieanne and I want to continue our relationship, obviously personally, but professionally as well, because we do see a lot of value in what you're doing, and you're a cool guy. So that helps. Again, do appreciate you, coming on the show this early in the morning. And if you're next time you're in Phoenix, obviously we need to grab some dinner. And again, you're a great guy and a person. I'm very happy for your success and your journey, and glad to be part of that, as friends first. And like I said, very excited for the journey that you're going on with Red Global. That's amazing. Julieanne, any last kind of words before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, I think I just want to give a shout out to American Dental Institute. So wanted to give that shout out. And then also thank you, Kim. It's so nice to see you here and have you on the show. And also a shout out to Dr. Lincoln, who had to hop off. I knew he had an appointment, so we're cutting it close there, but really appreciate you guys being on the show.
No, thank you so much for having me again. We'll kind of that lost too. That's it. Rocking.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you being my co-host.
Appreciate it,
We'll talk
guys.
soon, you guys.